in 1965, started in about 64, finished early 66. And it's so big because for the Apollo program to build the Saturn V rocket and assemble it, we had to have a building tall enough. The rocket itself is 363 feet tall, the Saturn rocket, but it was mounted on a platform, a mobile launcher platform. It's 55 feet high, and then we had a structure on top of the rocket, so the total height was about 485 feet tall.
They call this low bay. It's 285 feet to the roof here. We get into high bay, it's 525 feet. These two white things right here, those are pieces. It's actually a fold assembly. It's the top portion of the solid rocket boosters. Gee whiz facts, like for example, if you've ever been to Las Vegas and made the side trip to see Hoover Dam. Okay, you go down in the dam and you see these giant generators that are turned by water falling. Those generators produce enough electrical power to light up Las Vegas, some of Phoenix, some of Los Angeles. They sell it to them. I mean, they're enormous. It would take 13 Hoover dams to equal the power of one SSME shuttle main engine.
You know, a bullet out of a rifle goes about Mark II. That's the best you'll get out of a bullet. Well, the space shuttle's going at 12 times that speed, and it weighs about 250,000 pounds.
Hard to say.
It's definitely out.
And that's where this one is on the wall. Pieces that we saw down here, those go on glass. So that's to save wear and tear on the concrete, because this is getting to be an old building. They ruin perfectly good 3/4-inch plywood, but it saves wear and tear. Pointing up about 5 stories through the structure, you see some fluorescent lights, and the right kind of lights is an external tank. You can barely see the kind of orange color. I think the lights kind of give it a round shape, but that's the orange color is an external tank. It's hung on the wall here. So the back end has to move south. So they keep doing that operation. Now it's vertical. So they disconnect the aft portion of the swing, and the orbiter's hanging there. Right there, as far up as you can see, is probably about right here. So back here.
Remains of Columbia.
Immediately before New Year, we were all terrified of Y2K. Oh yeah. It was all for nothing when I missed the VBA. We did a whole bunch of spacewalks on the Hubble. The last one was right before Maybe for years. Right. Basically operate. If someone gets sick or whatever, getting ready for a space station flight, I would take their place. But otherwise, I'd love to. But you know, younger people should fly on the shuttle before it stops flying to get the experience of flying on their own US vehicle.
6 flights has got to be close to the record.
No, it's not. I haven't been. I need to fly. We're at space station for 5 months. And then most recently, as I say, I went to the ISS and I was the commander of the ISS on Expedition 8. Because I had a US passport, I got to be a NASA astronaut. And it was my third try in 1987 when they finally picked me up. And I've been working at the Johnson Space Center in Houston as the cargo officer, or the payload officer for the space shuttle. Cargo's being carried up in that time. And I was responsible for actually the satellites that were being deployed out of the shuttle cargo bay. Communication satellites. After the Challenger accident, all the commercial activity that was being conducted on the space shuttle was ordered to be stopped by the Reagan administration. And about that same time, I was selected as an astronaut. And since then, my first flight was in 1992. Charlie Bolden, our new NASA administrator, was my first commander. We flew a mission called Atlas 1 to study global warming, carbon dioxide buildups, and the ozone hole over Antarctica. And it was a fantastic mission, and Charlie was a great commander. I flew as a scientist because I'm a physicist on that flight. And then subsequently, my second flight was a repeat of that mission a year later in 1993. And then in 1995, really interesting thing happened. We joined in a partnership with Russia to complete the International Space Station. And just in the last few months of training on Discovery, the STS-128 crew, we were redesignated to go to the Mir space station. We didn't have a docking adapter, but we just flew up to it and flew around it. This is the Russian space station they'd had for about 13 years at that time. And I had no idea that as we flew around it, and they were talking to me in Russian, I didn't understand it at all, that I would actually be on that space station just 8 months later, living on it for 5 months, and speaking Russian.
You're not properly dressed, so we have some special clothes.
You folks that wore tennis shoes and slacks are perfect. High heels, there's too many tripping hazards.
All right, yeah, while they're getting dressed, I'll give you a mandatory safety briefing. You're going to go in orbiter processing facility number 1. All right, it is a hazardous processing area. So that's why these people that aren't properly dressed have to put on the proper clothes. At any rate, as we go through here, there's a lot of exposed flight hardware. Please don't touch any of it. We have a touchy-feely display. We'll actually hand you some towel and you get the handle towel off of the orbiter. Otherwise, please don't touch the hardware. As you walk around, pay attention. There are some trip hazards. I know everybody wants to look at the orbiter, but also pay attention to where you're going. I'm sure Tom did a good job of reminding you that all of your cell phones, any transmitting devices should have stayed on the bus. They're not allowed in this building, so if you have them, you have to put them back on the bus. Also, there's trash cans as you go by, no food, no gum, no water, none of that's allowed in here. In the event an alarm goes off while you're in this building, we have people that will be escorting you. Do not attempt to run out of the building. It's their job to take you to a safe area. It's your job not to lose sight of them. We'll break you up into small groups. If you're a family or something like that, want to stay together, let me know. Otherwise, we'll put you in groups of about 10 so you can hear a little bit more. And please feel free to ask any questions. All right?
The one that's on the pad is Discovery. Of course, that one's getting ready to launch. We're next in line. We should be rolling out for late September with the launch in November.
And what do you normally, other than tour guide, what do you do there?
I'm the app shop manager.
Okay.
What exactly do you do to the orbiter when it comes down? There's a whole bunch of stuff you got to do.
Yeah, well, depends what's going on for each particular mission. For the app shop, we pull all 3 engines out, we do all the systems, retest all the systems. Everything gets retested from beginning to end. The mid-body, in this particular one, this is the vehicle that went to Hubble. Well, what you're looking at is this is the tile, the belly of the tile. So where you're at right now is right about there on the orbiter. All of white circles you see?
Is it mine?
On each bill.
Bill.
You want to see where the orbiter is?
I'm pointing where we were, yeah. Thank you.
All the little white circles are waterproofing. Every tile on here has to be waterproof every flight. So,
How do you do that?
we do it on third shift. You guys wear a backpack, you're all suited up.
Every one of them's different. A little bit different.
Don't need it.
Why?
You don't need practice. Add your hand in water.
We roll it over there on the back of a big flatbed truck. Okay, and then a crane sling is hooked up to it. And you look at that crane, you actually lift it up to the vertical position. That's the way
A bunch of tourists.
I don't care.
Real high temperature.
Was it discovered in this time by an emergency vehicle?
Yes, launch on need.
So was there a crew that was specially trained for that? How did they find a crew to do that launch?
It's the same crew that they use to actually fly it. When they flew on that. Yep. Laid out to the orbiter, and so you would get a damage, in one area, you wouldn't take out the whole system, you would take out that portion of the system. So when you don't put your primary with your backup system together in the same place, otherwise what's the point?
Right.
825 people are targeted for layoff. They'll be out of here starting October 7th through the 9th. Fortunately, my group in the OBF processing facility, it's all been voluntary. We haven't had to force anybody to leave. We haven't, just as most of the people that are going out of this first run are voluntary.
Now, they're retirement leave. Can they extend the life if so desired, or are these things so worn that they can keep going and going?
My opinion is the maintenance that's done on these things. We were just talking to the shop this morning. This is corrosion. You think of corrosion. You're looking at a microscope and a magnifying glass to find the corrosion. When they say corrosion, you're looking at a magnifying glass and you guys have to analyze it. If it's really corrosion or whether it's a speck of something else. We don't have corrosion the way most people think of corrosion. We don't have, we fix it when it's the inspection level that goes through this thing and the scrutiny that goes through these things are intense.
So they don't have to retire based on the fact that they're getting
My opinion, no.
The problem is just there aren't any extra tanks.
Right.
We run out of tanks, the contracts are done.
Right.
So that's it. I
So
mean,
they
there's a
want-
finite number of expeditions you could fly.
talking about the big arms.
Yes.
If they
Can't
want
build anymore.
Well, you could. You want, but it's an awful lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's not like a rational amount of money. It's a crazy amount.
Such microscopic corrosion. Obviously, it's not visible.
This is Wally Jacobs. He's going to teach us everything we ever want to know about tile. Thermal protector system.
Did you get your whole crew of this all of them?
This is it.
Oh, you're a small group.
Yep.
All right, this is the Atlantis, which is right over your heads. There's 24,182 of these tiles up there. Each tile only goes in one location and has its own serial number and its location number on each tile. The side walls are a little bit angled. The shape, the size is what makes it go in only one location. There is also what we call blankets. This is an A-frizzy blanket. It's flexible where the tiles are rigid. These go on the upper surfaces. A tile can take up to 2,500 degrees. One of these blankets can take up to 1,700 degrees. Pass it around.
Let's take one that's not broken first. Feel the weight.
Oh my God.
One reason this system was picked was due to the fact of how the weight. The tiles on the nose of the orbiter, you'll notice when you look at the nose door, are like 4 inches thick. Back in this area, they're 1.5 inches thick. And you can pass this blanket around. The blanket, it goes over the curved surfaces and everything, and we can bond those into 30 by 30 squares. Where a tile, an average one is 6 by 6, so it's a lot easier to bond one of those blankets than it is a whole lot of tiles on the upper surface. If you look right above me, you'll see the leading edge of the wing, and that's what we call reinforced carbon-carbon. That'll take over 3,000 degrees, and that's the hottest area along with the nose cap. The tiles are not bonded directly to the skin of the orbiter. They're actually bonded to what we call a strain isolator pad. That's this system here. Due to the fact when you're in space you have a positive and negative 250 degrees roughly when the sun is shining and what's in the shadow. And also on re-entry, like on the Elevon surfaces back there, there's a lot of buffeting. And as you can see, the tiles can move back and forth. If they didn't move, due to the fact that cold and on re-entry, the tiles would pop off. Also, due to the fact of the motion and everything, we have what's called a pillow gap filler, which fits in there, and it protects the sidewalls of the two tiles from crashing together because there's actually that much motion.
And I'm sorry, how are they held onto this thing?
We use an RTV adhesive. It's bathroom caulk, roughly. It's just silica adhesive. We have a mixed crib here that puts the catalyst and everything in it. Of course, ours is a little bit purer than you get it at your handy store, and it costs a whole lot more. That is painted on the aluminum surface. The silica pad is then put into it. We have what's called a bond pressure pad that goes on the top of this, and which once this reaches we call it a shore A, a 55, that's the hardness. Then we have a crew comes out and has a vacuum chuck that fits this tile, and then they try to pull it off to make sure that it's bonded properly.
Is that what he was just doing over there? It had two pads,
yes,
and then a vacuum in the center. He's trying to pull one off? Okay.
Yeah, engineering tells us what load we can put, because you're actually putting the load on the structure, and it'll give them, okay, you can pull it to 10 PSI, and the average, if it's an average 6 by 6, that's 36 square inches of actually bond surface that they can pull against that tile to verify how well it's stuck.
Well, then how do you get it off if you have to change it?
All right, we either just destroy the tile itself.
How do you destroy it?
Just break it up. Actually, yeah, you'll take a hammer, break the surface. You'll go in with a non-metallic tool so you don't hurt the aluminum, and then just break it up, and then you'll leave this a pad, and then you will go in there and actually pull the pad off and clean it.
Rotating, it's the RSS, the support structure, that normally covers up the payload bay of the shuttle, the top part of it, to give the shuttle, get access to the cargo bay of the shuttle. And only in the last few hours before launch, which we are today, do they finally close those payload bay doors, which they've been purging, by the way, with dry air to make sure no humidity gets in. And they then rotate that structure back. And after about this visit, and they'll start clearing the pad, and they'll start taking all the vehicles out of that area. Only hazardous operations are going to be going on there from this point onwards. They start doing kind of a security check around this whole area, and the only people eventually to go out there, other than a couple of techs out on the pad, are the crew. And one of the most amazing things I found was going out on this road from the crew quarters about 4 hours before launch, so that'll be about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock this evening for the crew. They'll go out, and you go out in a little silver Astrovan, and you've got your little lunch packs with you. It's the cooling thing. It goes into your orange suit, keeps you cool. And as you go out, you have a police escort, and the sirens are going, well, not the sirens, but the lights are flashing. And you realize that you just see this stream of cars, and they're all going the other way. And you think, why are all these cars going the other way? And you realize it's because it's dangerous. You're going out to a vehicle that's hissing and alive. It's fueled up with hydrogen and oxygen. There's frost on the tank. And you can see you can hear and see the venting of the hydrogen from the top of the tank. As you get out of the bus, you go into a tiny elevator up to the top of the launch pad. Sort of 6 of you, 7 of you jammed in.
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
In your orange suits.
I'm with
and then once you're up on top, it's kind of neat. You're up high, you buy your vehicle, and it takes about an hour or so to get people into their seats, one after the other. And on a couple of occasions, I've been just about the last person to get on board. So I've had time to kind of walk around the upper part of the launch pad and just kind of think about what I'm doing. I've gotten into the, I've been on launches at 1:30 in the morning, I remember. And I've also been on launches at 8 o'clock in the morning. Once you're inside the orbiter, you're lying on your back, of course, because that's the best way to take the accelerations, which go up to about 3 gravities. And when you're lying there, you're quite comfortable, but your knees are up in the air. You're on basically a regular chair, but it's on its back. You've been to the bathroom, so you try not to think about that anymore. And because you can be there for flights that did not go to the space station, we didn't have a short launch window. We could have a launch window as long as 2 hours. So if you went out there 4 hours beforehand and now you're 2 hours on the pad, you could really be in pain. But nowadays it's much more civilized. We only have basically a 10-minute launch window. We launch right in the middle, so it's effectively 5 minutes. And that means one way or another, you're on your back for about 4 hours. And you're either going to be in orbit at the end of that 4 hours or going back to crew quarters. With a pretty smooth ride, the Soyuz does, as opposed to the rough ride the shuttle gives you for the first 2 minutes. Remember, the shuttle, I'm not going to knock the shuttle. The shuttle's fantastic. It's just that there's so much power in those 2 candles on the side.
What about the more movements? Right. One step.
It's not very clean. I mean, they should have somebody else scrubbing. Yeah, well, when they move that away, they used to call it hamper. When they move that away, it's standing out there. This is way cool. They're going to come out, but what the heck? Okay.
Yeah, that was big. Jason? Come on down, Jason.
We're now driving to where it all comes to a close and ends for a space shuttle mission, which is the Shuttle Landing Facility, it's called. And It's basically just a runway. That's the most you can say about it. It's a big runway. It's long. It was specially built here in Florida. Obviously, it's mostly swamp around here, so it costs a lot of money to put that runway in. This thing is called a PIGM. I don't know what PIGM stands for, but it's the mate-demate device, and it basically lifts the shuttle up and puts it onto a 747.
Thank you very much, Michael. We're going to go get some lunch now. NASA has nothing to do with the food. That's a good way to start talking about eating lunch, right? Kind of makes you nervous. No, the food is really not that bad. It is 100%. It's 100% better than what we feed the paying tourists that come. You know, they have like pre-wrapped sandwiches and, you know, $5 for a Coke and $10 for a hamburger or something. This is where the workers eat, and it really is not that bad. You'll probably enjoy it.
My name is Mike Bolger, and I'm the Director of Information Technology here at the Kennedy Space Center. We'll begin today's briefing with the singing of our country's national anthem. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Susie Cunningham to the podium. Susie is the Strategic Planning Manager in the KSC Advanced Planning Office.
Oh, say, can you see the home of the brave?
That was beautiful. Thank you, Susie. Now I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Mr. Robert E. Cabana is the 10th Director of NASA's John F. Kennedy Space Center, where he oversees a team of approximately 2,200 civil servants and 13,000 contractor employees. Prior to his appointment as Center Director in October 2008, the veteran of 4 Space Shuttle missions served as the Director for NASA's Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Bob Cabana.
Thanks, Mike, and welcome to the Kennedy Space Center. I think we have a rather spectacular show lined up for you in about 2.5 hours. For those that have never seen a night shuttle launch, it turns nighttime into daylight. Please don't take any pictures, just enjoy the view and experience the shuttle launch. You don't just see it, you feel it, you hear it, and it truly is an experience, and it really gets your heart pumping, and it's pretty amazing. We've got 7 more shuttle missions left. We're going to complete the space station and transition to a new program, and it's going to be great down here at the Kennedy Space Center when we do that. So I hope you enjoy the launch. Really take time to experience it. It's special. We may make it look easy, but I'm telling you, this is the most fantastic team. They're dedicated, they're hardworking, they're focused, and they make the extremely difficult look easy. We have one other center director here. Kennedy gets to process the vehicles and launch them, but once it clears that tower, it turns over to Houston. And Mike Coates, the director of the Johnson Space Center, is with us this evening. And Mike's going to take over. Once the shuttle's out of here, and we had Robert Lightfoot here, recently named, he was acting now, he is the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center. Robert's over in Mission Control, or Launch Control Center. We just left a little while ago. Everything is tracking nominally. There's no issues on the vehicle. If we can clear out that weather that you saw up there and it doesn't become an impact here in a couple hours, we'll get these guys off on another outstanding mission to the space station. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cabana. Nominated by President Barack Obama and confirmed by the U.S. Senate, our next speaker began his duties as the 12th Administrator of NASA on July 17, 2009. As Administrator, he leads the NASA team and manages its resources to advance the agency's missions and goals. Retired Marine Corps Major General Charles Frank Bolden Jr.'s confirmation marks the beginning of his second stint with the nation's space agency. His 34-year career with the Marine Corps included 14 years as a member of NASA's astronaut office. He's a veteran of 4 space flights, and he served as commander of 2 of those flights. His flights included deployment of the Hubble Space Telescope and the first joint U.S.-Russian shuttle mission, which featured a cosmonaut as a member of his crew. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Charles F. Bolden.
Thank you all very much. They told me I had 2 minutes, so I had to throw about 6 pages of notes away, and I will try to get through this. Let me join Bob in welcoming you here and echo one thing he said. Do not think of looking through the lens of a camera at the launch. It's wasted. You gotta really just enjoy it. We can provide you photos much better than even if you have a great camera. You can't get photos that will compare to the ones that we'll give you. So enjoy the launch, and if I'm crying out there, it's not unusual for me. I just get very emotional. These 2 center directors will tell you, this is nerve-wracking for us. It is much easier to be in the vehicle, in the crew van, going out to the launch pad where you're focused on the mission, and not sitting here worried about your friends getting ready to go leave the planet. So, and that's probably the way you ought to think about this thing. We're talking about 7 people who are getting ready to leave the planet. That is unique, and it's something that because of the work of NASA through the years and our partners, we've been able to do successfully in almost every case. Let me take this opportunity, though, to introduce some very special guests that we have. She's not a guest, but I have to introduce her because she is my partner in crime. My Deputy Administrator, Lori Garver. Lori, would you stand up so people can listen? As you can tell from Lori's smile, she is almost always happy. And so it causes people to ask the 2 of us, since we smile a lot, you all don't know what's going on. And we go, no, but we're very optimistic people, and we basically are. We are incredibly pleased to have representatives from our international partners, Dr. Simonetta Di Peppo, who is the Director of Human Spaceflight. She's the Director of Human Spaceflight from the European Space Agency, and Dr. Olaf Norberg, who is the Director General of the Swedish National Space Program. And we have one other guest who snuck in on us, and he thought he would get away with it, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. And he is John Goransson, who is the Swedish Chief of Defense. So John Goransson, thank you very much. You're going to have the treat of listening to, for those of you who are old enough to remember Mr. Wizard and young enough to know Bill Nye the Science Guy, you're going to get the perfect hybrid of those 2 individuals in the form of Don Pettit, who is absolutely incredible in taking very complex things and making them sound simple. So thanks again for coming, and enjoy yourselves tonight. Like Bob said, don't put your head in the camera. Thank you.
In just a couple of hours, we'll witness the Space Shuttle main engines and solid rocket boosters ignite, and the crew of STS-128 will blast off to where few have gone. What better way to prepare for this awesome sight than to hear from one who has very recently undertaken an incredible journey. A veteran of 2 shuttle flights and 1 International Space Station expedition, Dr. Donald Pettit was selected into the NASA Astronaut Corps in 1996. Dr. Pettit completed his first spaceflight aboard Endeavour during mission STS-113 and subsequently served as NASA International Space Station Science Officer during Expedition 6, logging over 160 days in space, including 13 extravehicular activity hours. More recently, he served as mission specialist during STS-126 in November of last year. During that mission, Dr. Pettit operated the robotic arm for a total of 4 EVAs. Ladies and gentlemen, NASA astronaut Dr. Donald Pettit.
We're here to celebrate the launch of STS-128, and we'll see that in a couple of hours. And I want, there we go, 128. And we're familiar with the crew. Here's all their smiling faces. And what these folks are doing right now, they're probably, they're in the orbiter, they're strapped in, they're probably catching a few extra Z's about now. Either that or telling jokes. But anyway, what I want to talk a little bit is what happens in a launch, particularly what you can see in a launch from here. A couple of neat science tidbits to look out for. And then I'm going to switch subjects a little bit and talk about exploring the frontier. Why we go into space and what are some of the things that we can learn. So I'm going to start off here. This is a picture of a night launch. It happens to be 126. Taken from near this location. And one of the things that you can see when you launch is first the booster's light. And you can see that right away because light travels so fast. But sound travels, takes about 5 seconds to travel a mile. And we're about 3 miles away. So it'll be about 15 seconds before you actually hear the engines go. But sound will travel about 5 times faster in the ground. So the sequence, pay attention to this, the sequence. You'll see the flash from the engine's light. 3 or 4 seconds later, you'll feel the building shake. And then about 10 seconds after that, you'll hear the roar from the engines, and you won't just hear it, you'll feel it. It'll shake your body. Your clothes will be rattling on your body. So pay attention to it in that order. And it's from the speed of propagation of sound and light. Now we're going to move here. This is a bit of a video that from a camera that's fastened to the solid rocket booster. You see those things coming off? Those are Tyvek covers. It's a fancy name for a piece of plastic that covers some of the reaction control jets just to keep the rain out. You've seen it rain here. It keeps the water from filling up the little rocket jets. You don't want that. So those covers keep the weather out. And it doesn't take long until they get off the pad that they We're going to watch this over again. The covers are coming off. See the vapor cloud? Low pressure regions nucleate a vapor cloud. Watch this, it'll be separation here. here's the actual sound. It was the solid rocket boosters here. They creak and groan. It goes on and on. The solid rocket boosters end up back in the ocean. We've got some parachutes that come out and give them a fairly gentle landing. Now, the next little bit of video shows, again, another shuttle night launch. And it flies through a cirrus layer of clouds. And I don't know whether we'll see this tonight, but it's something for you to watch out for. The shock waves coming off from the shuttle when it's going supersonic, when these shock waves hit other objects like ice crystals that make clouds, it heats them up and it'll melt the crystals. So watch this little bit of video here. There's the shuttle, and it's going to go through a cirrus layer, and you can see that expanding circle. That's the shock wave that follows the shuttle, expanding out at the speed of sound as it's propagating, and it melts the crystals from the jump discontinuity in the shock wave. So that's something else to watch out for when you see the launch this evening. Now, I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to start talking about why we explore space. And space is a frontier. And one characteristic of a frontier is that your intuition no longer applies. The intuition that's honed by being creatures of Earth does not apply in the frontier of space. The answers are not in the back of the book. And because of this, it's an environment that's rich for discovery. And I think that's one of the reasons why human beings go to frontiers, whether it's in the bottom of the ocean or stratosphere, under the stage of a microscope, or in this case, in space. So I'll illustrate some aspects of what this frontier environment we call space is like. So here, this is a space station. It's about 100 meters in any direction you care to measure, whether it's the width of the solar panels, the length of the truss, the length of all the little modules that kind of look like Coke cans that are all spread together. And it's an amazing environment, being in orbit about 400 kilometers in altitude, 240 nautical miles above the surface of Earth. And it's a place, again, where intuition doesn't really apply. And what we're going to see are some time-lapse movies taken that kind of show a different view of what this orbital environment is like. So take a peek at this. These are the view of the shuttle pilot windows. And these are pictures taken, one picture every 15 seconds. And when you normally look out the window, the Earth is moving, but it's moving kind of slow. It's sort of like watching a minute hand on a clock. But when you make these time-lapse movies, all of a sudden, the world comes alive. Your environment that you're looking at comes alive. There's the sun rising. Look at that. And clouds moving. And you'll notice that the rotation of Earth seems to be changing in this view. And that's because we're doing orbital maneuvers. Actually, the shuttle is doing a pirouette about its starboard wing. And see, look at that, the rotation just changed. We're over Egypt there, the Nile River just went by. Goes by quickly. And then here the sun is going to set. Look at that. And now we're going to see another time-lapse view. This is taken out of the Russian airlock window. You can see the Soyuz, you can see the shuttle, the Earth is moving. There's a radiator rotating around. Here comes the solar panel. There's 3 robotic arms visible here. You see shadows moving around. Stuff is constantly moving and wiggling on the outside of the space station, but it's moving again on a time scale of a minute hand on a clock. You typically don't notice that anything is really moving when you look out the window. And by doing these time-lapse movies, all of a sudden you're seeing something different that you haven't been able to investigate before. Now, we're on space station, and this is node 2. And I like to think of these nodes as the Connecto Lego block. And there's a room just off the side here for the kids, and I was in there not too long ago, and they don't have Legos, but they have something else that's similar. But anyway, the node 2 is kind of like a Connecto Lego block. It has 6 things on it, 6 ports that you connect other modules. And here we had 5 out of the 6 ports connected. So just look at what the traffic patterns can be here for when you are in this orbital environment. You can go that direction, you can go that direction, you can go this direction and that direction, and then you can do them all at once. See, you almost need a traffic cop. So you can imagine, you can't move around here on Earth. We walk on this floor, right? But when you're in a weightless environment, you can move in a different way than what we're used to. And the way that you can think about solving problems is different when you're in this orbital environment. Because you have 3-dimensional space. You can put your computer desk on the ceiling. I mean, how many computer desks do you see up on the ceiling here? We don't do that down here, but in this environment, we can use the volume around us in a completely different way. Now, look at this. You can run around. Skylab had a neat movie of this, and we had to recreate this in the node. You can run around in a circle, and the radial acceleration or centrifugal force or artificial gravity, whatever, it keeps you against the wall, and you can run around like that. Now, NASA, the engineers at NASA are really, really clever. They figured out how to make a printer work in 0 gravity. And before we launch, and as soon as you launch, no more paperwork, right? But now that we've got this printer, as soon as you launch, you'll get packets up. I had to change about 40 pages a day in our launch manifest. And so here's a 3-ring notebook. You got to change 40 pages out every day. It can get to be a real mess. And so I'm just going to show you how you manage your paperwork when you're on orbit. So try that down here. And notice, see, I got a couple of clips to keep the pages, the error pages you don't want to lose. But then sometimes you do lose the pages. So this shows, this does not work the way your intuition does down here on Earth. There's lots of neat things to investigate, new ways of operating that you can only do when you go into one of these frontier environments and experience it. Now let's see what else we have there. Oh, sunset and sunrise. How long does that take here? The sun's about 1/2 degree. We rotate 360 degrees every 24 hours. You figure that out. It's about 2 minutes for the sun, the disk of the sun to disappear. When you're on orbit, you go around once every 90 minutes. It takes 7.5 seconds for the sun to rise or set. And so this next video, you're going to have to pay attention. The next video shows one of my colleagues out doing a spacewalk in orbital night. And in 7.5 seconds, boom, it's full daylight. So watch this. So that's Steve Bullen outside. It's black as black can be. He's using his headlight there to see what he's doing. Now the sun's coming up. And the automatic color balance on the camera takes a while. It hunts around a little bit. And there you go. So that's how long it takes for sunset and sunrise to occur, and going from pitch black to bright full sun, or bright full sun to pitch black. And again, this is counterintuitive. You think, oh, well, the sun's coming, okay, so it's going to get dark. You got some time. In space, you have no time. you have to be prepared for these transitions. Oh, when you're in, these are flattering pictures, aren't they? This shows how we drink our beverages in orbit. You can't drink out of an open container because one, the fluid would just stay in there. You couldn't tip it up and get your coffee out. And two, if you bump your container, the liquid's going to just fly out and make a big mess. So we suck all our fluid out from bags, from pouches. And it's kind of a gauche thing to do. Emily Post would not approve of this. And when I'm sitting there sucking fluid out from one of these bags, I can't help but think of some insect that's sucking the juices out from another insect. You know, it's just one of those kinds of things. So, necessity being the mother of invention, and human beings having this urge to really drink out of an open container like human beings are meant to. I put this together on orbit. It's a little piece of plastic from one of our flight data files put together with the orbital equivalent of Scotch tape. It's this Kapton tape. And you see it has this cross-section that kind of looks like an airplane wing. And this is a zero gravity beverage cup. You can drink your tea and coffee from this. So look at the next video here, and it shows putting some tea in this thing. And look what happens. Look how the water magically creeps up the side of that cup. And it's creeping up the side that has that acute angle. Isn't that really neat? And so you can just throw your lip over that one side there and start sucking on the tea, and then more will just climb right up the side. And look at that. See that acute angle? There's a neat little equation. If that acute angle is less than 2 times the quantity, 90 minus the contact wetting angle, then the criteria is satisfied, and that fluid will jump up the side of the cup. Now, I expect everybody to know this when you walk out the door. Now you see, it helps to be a rocket scientist because we use it. I mean, you laugh, but we use this to design fuel tanks for rocket engines that we have to light on orbit. Because once your main engine's cut off, you're in this weightless environment. Now you got this fuel tank filled with fuel for your orbital engines, and that fuel's going to be just floating around inside of your tank. And when you want to relight that engine, say, for example, you want to come back to Earth, and you want to do your deorbit, and you want to light that engine, that fuel may or may not be in contact with the suction port. And rocket engines do not like to suck gas vapor bubbles into the engine. They're having a bad day if that happens. So in order for these clever rocket scientists, these rocket engineers, to keep the fluid in contact with the suction port, they have a series of vanes with acute angles designed with that little magic equation that I told you, and that keeps the fluid in contact with the suction port. We can light our engines and we can come back to Earth. And knowing all of this, and this is where it helps to be, sort of a partial rocket scientist, we used that concept in order to make this little coffee cup. So now, let me get this guy going here. Okay, so now that you have this coffee cup, there's Steve Bowen and I, and we're going to have a little tea break here. We're filling these cups with tea. And you can see that they just, the fluid is in the bottom of the cup, but it creeps up the side where you have that acute angle. Look at that. You can move this all around, and you don't have to worry about sloshing this stuff out. And so now we can have an open container of fluid, and we can drink it in a weightless environment like human beings are meant to drink fluids. And again, this is an example. You're in this frontier. Human beings have certain behavior that they want to do, and you will use whatever means you have available, like take a piece of plastic from your flight data file to accommodate what you like. So here we are. Steve and I are having a coffee break on orbit, and you could have 2 farmers leaning over the fence talking about how your sheep are doing. So what would we be talking about? Well, we're saying, well, how's the urine processor working? And so Steve would ask that to me, and I'd say, "Oh, it's working pretty good. You're drinking it." And look at that. See, we can suck these cups dry. Look at, see, that's how dry you can drink this. That's how much contact a wetting angle and surface tension is your friend in a weightless environment. And now, look at this. Just to show that orientation has no effect, right? Look at that. You can hold it upside down. Of course, there's no upside down or right side up in a weightless environment, but you can sit there and you can drink your tea in an inverted position like this. Now, students, I know there's a bunch of you in here. Students, don't try this at home. Okay, this next one is going to be. There's a little soundtrack on this next one. We did a toast, and astronauts have been toasting in space with their bags. So you clunk your bags together, but that's not really a toast, right? I mean, you clunk a bag together and suck your juice out with a straw. But that's not being human. But now that we have these cups, I argue for the first time, human beings were able to make a real toast. So let's see what happens here. Let's do a toast to future space exploration.
Future space exploration.
And then do a Thanksgiving toast.
Happy Thanksgiving.
To all our families and friends. We're running out of things to toast. Let's just toast because we can. So, I tell folks, in 500 years, nobody will even know that I walked the surface of Earth or floated around in space. But I argue, human beings will be living and working in space for generations, and they will be drinking their favorite beverages out of cups of my design. This is an example of going into a frontier where your intuition does not apply, and it's a place that's rich in discovery. Now, is this discovery going to help feed and clothe the world? No, it's not. It's just, it's something to be sold at concession stands next to the things of astronaut ice cream, right? Which we don't have on orbit, by the way. But anyway, it's something, though, that illustrates what happens when you put human beings in a frontier environment where things are different than what we do down here on Earth. Let's see what the next one is. Oh, this, I have to call this an effervescent antacid tablet. And that's a big blob of water that's attached to a little wire frame. Anybody have any idea what's going to happen? Have you heard like, plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a mess it is? What do you think is going to happen here? Now, before we did this experiment, before we even launched, we came up with two theories on what was going to happen. The first theory was we'll put the tablet in the water, it'll form all these bubbles, but there's no longer gravitational driven buoyancy, so the bubbles won't float to the surface, right? And we thought, well, maybe these bubbles will all coalesce and form a gas pocket around the tablet, and it'll stop the reaction. So we call that the gas film quench model. Scientists, you have to name your model after something, right? But then we thought, well, what happens if we put the tablet in? Gas bubbles will form. Gravity won't be there to drive the bubbles off. But the bubbles don't coalesce. So they just form all these little bubbles. Well, then water can get down through the laminate between the bubbles, and it'll form another layer of bubbles behind that one, and then another layer, so you get this big expanding mess. And maybe it was the environment that we were doing this theoretical analysis in, but we decided to call that the expanding beer head model. So, I want to see a show of hands. Who thinks it's going to be the gas film quench model? Test your intuition. Test your intuition. Okay, we've got some takers here. Who thinks it's going to be the expanding beer head model? Oh, look at that, look at that. Yeah, well, it turns out both models are wrong. And again, it shows your intuition just doesn't necessarily apply because we're creatures of the surface of the planet Earth. So, oh my gosh, I was told that, oh, we have to cut this short. I guess there's not going to be time to show. Do you really if the administrator says that we can see it. Okay. So let me click the little button here, and you can see what happens. Okay, there goes the tablet. Isn't that wild? It turns out the bubbles are ejected from the surface of the tablet with a finite velocity. They move out, they intersect with other bubbles, and they grow. And I liken this to bubble war. The bubbles eat each other. And there's this cruel act of bubble war that big bubbles eat little bubbles at a faster rate than little bubbles can eat other bubbles. And so big bubbles get big and little bubbles get eaten. And you end up with this bipolar world here with two super bubbles. And all the little bubbles are pushed in between and they're just getting eaten. And the big bubbles are growing bigger. But eventually, one super bubble prevails. Look at that. And then, of course, the hand that the experimenter reaches in and restores balance. Okay. Oh. Now this is snack time on the space station. And that was opening up a package of bread. It's Russian bread. And there are these little tiny bite-sized loaves. And there's a can of honey. It's miot. And we're opening up a can of honey. Now, the Russian food doesn't have Velcro on it, so you can't stick it to the table. So we use our surface chemistry. Look at this. We put a blob of water on the bottom of that can of Russian honey. And look what you could do. You could just stick it to the table. Voila. And there's the honey, and I like to eat my food with chopsticks, and we'll see more about that. Look at that. There's the honey. And there's those little loaves of Russian bread. They're a little scaled loaf, a bite-sized loaf, so you don't make crumbs, right? If you had a loaf of bread, you'd cut it and you'd make all these crumbs. They'd make a mess. And we call these our oh, look at this. There's a tractor beam of honey. Look at that. It just sucks out little And we call these loaves of bread our Barbie bread because it's a perfectly scaled loaf to the size of a Barbie doll. Now look at this. Now there's one of those bags of tea, and I'm squirting some of the tea out the end of the straw. And look what you can do. You can eat your tea with chopsticks. Look at that. You just grab a blob of tea with your chopsticks, and then you can just go ahead and eat it. You look at that. Oh, look at the surface profile in the honey. It's a hemispherical profile. There's a spherical blob of tea, and you just grab that with your chopsticks, and you just eat your tea this way. It's an elegant way to eat your tea. You don't have to suck it out of the bag. And this is one of the better uses of all this surface chemistry I learned in college. You can use that to eat your tea with chopsticks. So look at that. There you go. Oops, you spill a little drop, you just go after it. There you go, you grab another one. This is really a nice way to eat your tea. Oh, and peanut butter. Peanut butter is really, really good when you mix it with honey. Now, if you've never had peanut butter and honey before, go home tonight and mix some peanut butter and honey. It's really good. And here we are, we're mixing the peanut butter in the honey. And this is really a tasty snack when you're on station. Look at that. Now that's not the Loch Ness Monster. And you see, in space, you get to play with your food and you can call it science. And then you just grab a cracker and you go in, and this is really yummy stuff. Okay, so that shows you a little bit about how you can have a snack in this frontier environment called space. Oh, Now here, this is space drums. This is a piece of equipment we brought up, a neat scientific piece of equipment, and that's a little handle. And watch what happens when I give it a spin. Now, have you ever seen that down here if you give something a spin? We'll see it a couple of times because it's really interesting. This has to do with moments of inertia, and it has to do with an object that has an intermediate moment of inertia. And students, homework assignment, investigate moments of inertia. Look at that, and it does it at a slow rate of rotation. Really neat things happen when you're in this environment. You remove the local effects of gravity, you're weightless, and you can observe things that are not clouded by having gravitational effects. Oh. Now, we had some compact disc players. Now, I'm finding there's a whole echelon of students that don't even know what these are. I mean, that doesn't make you feel old. I mean, I talk about phonograph records. I mean, that's back in the dark ages. Now, compact disc players, there's students that don't even know what these are. Anyway. Okay, so I couldn't help it. There's 3 of these on station when I was there, one for each crew member. I couldn't help but notice that there's a certain amount of gyroscopic stability from that spinning music disc in there. And so there's one turned off, right? It tumbles freely about its center of mass, and there's one turned on. Now, being kind of an uber geek guy, so you take 2 of them together, and notice they're orthogonal to each other. That means they're 90 degrees. That's a fancy way of saying 90 degrees, right? So now we have a 2-axis gyroscopically stabilized platform. Look at that. Now, what do you think we're going to do next? Realize we have 3 of these. So there we have 3 of them taped together, and they're turned off. It freely tumbles about its center of gravity, center of mass. But there they are, they're turned on, and now we have a 3-axis gyroscopically stabilized platform, complements of a spinning music disc. And I was talking to one group of students, and one of the students wanted to know whether it would be more stable if we had heavy metal in there. And I think he got minus 10 points on his midterm. So what can you do with this? Well, you tape your flashlight to it, and then when you're working in a dark corner on a space station, you see, you have this gyroscopically stabilized third hand, and then you're working with a drill driver, and you can listen to music at the same time. So again, one of these neat things you can do when you're in one of these environments where things are slightly different than on planet Earth. Oh, we had a visit by the Invisible Man. Really, what this, there's a lot of neat science in this. Can't you see all the science? What this shows is the relative stiffness of things that we think are limp and lithe are really, the intrinsic stiffness is overcome by the gravitational induced weight of the material. So you think of your shirt and your pants, you lay them out on a table and they're flat, right? But you take away gravity and you shake them a little bit and your shirt puffs up as if somebody's wearing it. And that's because there's a certain stiffness in the threads and the fibers of your shirt, but gravity overpowers that stiffness and you don't see it. But when you're in orbit, all of a sudden, things that you think were limp, all of a sudden behave like steel springs, like slinkies. And so here's an example of that. Look at that. Now, students today know what that is. But look at the earbuds. See, they're a loose, real limp wire. But look at that. It is acting like a slinky. So again, it shows that things that we didn't give credit to its intrinsic stiffness, you take away gravity, and now all of a sudden you make this observation that it behaves like a spring. Okay, this gets close to the end of my talk here. Here's another little time-lapse sequence just showing some views outside of the Japanese module window looking at the solar panels. conclusion, I'd like to just say that frontiers are a place where your intuition does not apply. The answers are not in the back of the book. These are places that are rich in discovery, and human beings have this uncanny interest in going to these kinds of frontiers. And we're going to see a crew launch tonight, hopefully if the weather permits, to go into space, to carry on some of these amazing enterprises that human beings can do when we go into a frontier. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pettit. That was really great. Well, this concludes the launch briefing of STS-128. I hope you enjoy your visit to KSC tonight. We're honored to share this proud day with you. Enjoy the launch, and Godspeed Discovery.
Coming up on the T-minus 9-minute hold. 3, 2, 1, and we're at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. This is a scheduled hold that will last about 45 more minutes. T-minus 11 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Houston Spaceflight Meteorology Group is go. Storms in the area that created a slight delay for the final inspection team as it was making its way down fixed service structure, doing its walk down to look for formation of any ice or frost. They were delayed by about Space Shuttle Discovery is poised on launch pad 3980 to begin a 13-day mission to the International Space Station.
That's the vehicle assembly building. That's the family area. And this is the press area.
Okay, it is August 28th, 2009. It is about 14 minutes to lunchtime. It's a balmy night here in Cape Canaveral, Florida, with Mike, Eric, and Brian Pearson, and Mike Young here to watch STS-128 go off.
Space Shuttle STS-128.
Did you say endeavor? I could have sworn he just said endeavor.
Space Shuttle Discovery.
He did.
Discovery. Less than 10 minutes.
It's just helicopter that's flying out there.
It's gone for right now.
Gone.
Not 1 minute.
I don't think it's even 1 minute before the whole comes off.
And we're just a few seconds away from resuming the count.
The countdown clock will resume on my mark.
3, 2, 1. And we're ready, right there. And counting.
9 minutes and counting.
We got last time.
Yes, sir.
Now automatically informed by the GMO's computer located wherever the navigation process. T-minus 3 minutes, 25 seconds counting. Finally, the purpose of the shutdown is complete, and the failure of 3 main engines will be given to a pre-programmed physical distributor as a final weapon deploy.
Get the spray there.
What pre-flight?
They started in the water. And quite a few flight inspections.
T-minus 40 minutes now. Final version of the technical plan is a good option for taking us away. And complete the curve of the shuttle main engines. T-minus 2 minutes, 45 seconds now.
Actually see it.
I'm going to start at like 10.
T-minus 1 minute, 30 seconds, and all systems are go. We're about 90 seconds from the launch station of the Shuttle. T-minus 1 minute, 50 seconds. The liquid has been contained by the external vents for the passenger compartment. T-minus 1 minute and now.
1 minute.
The booster joint heater will be reactivated at this time. T-minus 60 seconds. Transitioning to orbital control power. Discovery power on the crew on board fuel cell. T-minus 38 seconds and now. Coming out of the all system start. T-minus 31 seconds. And we have another all system start. On-board computer has primary control of all vehicles' critical functions.
20 seconds.
T-minus 20 seconds. T-minus 60 seconds. Balance of the water system has been activated. We have for
Like the sun.
See the separation? There they go.
That's a big step. Yeah. Oh, I can see them.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Need a picture of that.
And it's still easily the brightest star in the sky on a bright night.
Discovery flying with singular power for 32 engines during a half a second from the shuttle launch fuel tank.
47 miles. Downrange.
Discovery coming up on the point of negative return where the shuttle will be too far downrange, too high at altitude to return to the launch site in the event of an engine failure. Discovery, engine return. Discovery speeding straight as now on a night flight for the bridge of the International Space Station Sunday night. 4 minutes 8 seconds into the flight, Discovery 61 miles an hour, 263 miles downrange from the base.
It's 163 miles away and 61 miles off.
Great shape.
I can see it with my eye.
Orbit halfway towards preliminary orbit. Discovery's engines, fuel cells, and auxiliary power units performing as advertised. Discovery now 212 miles downrange and United States. The environmental systems officer reports the activation of good flash operator system providing cooling for Discovery's avionics until the payload bay doors are open an hour and a half into its flight. 5 minutes into the ascent toward orbit. It's viewed from a camera on the external fuel tank.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, it's just winking out now.
Discovery to ATM for that picture.
Now it's getting brighter.
The column got off during low indicating that Discovery can make minimal abort-to-orbit targets in the event of an engine failure. However, all 3 main engines continue to perform perfectly.
Now it's gone. Went behind its own smoke trail.
Well, unbelievable. So Chris is going to be upset that we don't try. Oh yeah.
I was amazing looking through the binoculars. The white engine, coming out white, not orange, white flame. Great weight from now. Yeah, man. Very nice. Faster than you are, doing better than you are. Be cool.
Got his sense, he's got his little hip flask out.